In this section, we'll discuss what's wrong with HAZOPs. The practice HAZOP has alerted you to some of these flaws. Here are some important ones. An obvious problem is tunnel vision caused by the focus on small nodes. Interface issues might easily be missed. This is what a complex process looks like at a high level. Focusing on one small node creates tunnel vision that obscures the big picture. Consider the implication of discussing the one vessel highlighted here. Is it likely that systems issues would be missed? Tunnel vision limits the kinds of deviations we can talk about. If you are limiting the discussion to one equipment item at a time, it'll be difficult to talk about startup or shutdown or final commissioning. We don't operate equipment items individually. We operate them as part of a system. And perhaps the worst impact of tunnel vision is in the recommendations made and the solutions implemented by the design team. Tunnel vision can restrict the solution space considered. The solutions to HAZOP recommendations often create problems worse than the ones they were intended to correct. As we've seen, it can be tricky to define meaningful nodes. We've also seen that you really cannot limit the discussion to one node at a time because the nodes impact each other. That the HAZOP discussion doesn't actually focus on one node at a time. We actually hop from node to node. This hopping from node to node causes tedium. It also causes a second bullet point item here, that HAZOP's reports are hard to read because of this hopping from node to node. Why are HAZOP reports so messed up and so hard to read? I bet that you've never read a HAZOP report. The only part that most people ever see is the recommendations list. You don't read them because they are very difficult to read. Why is that? We've seen that the discussion isn't limited to one node at a time, but hops from node to node. Pressure, temperature, and level deviations in node B may be caused by flow deviations in nodes A and C, so we'll frequently discuss node B while working on nodes A and C. The record of pressure, temperature, and level deviations in node B would largely be stored under flow deviations in other nodes. This makes a HAZOP report very difficult to read and to use. We've already seen the next most important fundamental problem with HAZOPs. The four main guide words are not independent. Flow deviations cause all or almost all pressure deviations, temperature deviations, and level deviations. If you use all four guide words, you'll do the HAZOP twice. Few people want to do the HAZOP once, and no one wants to do it twice. Many facilitators start with flow and then refer back to flow deviation discussions when discussing pressure, temperature, and level. An obvious problem with that is that we pay the least attention when the most important topics, pressure, temperature, and level, are being discussed. Next bullet point. HAZOPs are supposed to identify operability issues, but there's nothing explicit in the process to do that. If we identify operability issues, it's usually mainly because we have operations reps in the room. Next, I'm pretty sure you struggle with the risk assessment in the practice HAZOP. Risk assessment via a risk matrix is ambiguous and not repeatable. To a large extent, it will depend on who is in the room. And maybe the worst criticism of HAZOPs is that most people don't like them. And this can result in poor participation, especially when the process drags on for day after miserable day. For the remainder of the course, I'll discuss how the gate HAZOP process solves those problems. I'll discuss the fourth and fifth items on the list as I describe the stream-based HAZOP. Then I'll leave it to your judgment whether the stream-based HAZOP is likely to be more fun in addition to being more effective.